The wind hit like a fist. Mara had to brace against the doorframe just to keep from being thrown backward, her arm burning where the cold bit through her threadbare sleeve. Snow whipped past her face, needle-sharp, blinding. She couldn't see 3 feet in front of her, but she could hear it, breathing, ragged and wet, like a punctured lung trying to work. "Hello?" Her voice got swallowed by the storm. Nothing answered. Just that awful, labored breathing and the howl of wind that sounded almost like screaming. Mara's fingers were already going numb. 5 seconds outside and she was losing feeling. 10 seconds and she'd be in real trouble. 30 and she might not make it back inside. She stepped onto the porch anyway. The wood groaned under her boots. Ice had turned everything into a skating rink. She grabbed the railing, squinting against the snow, following the dark smear that cut across the boards. Then she saw him. A man. At least she thought it was a man. Hard to tell when he was curled on his side like a broken dog, covered in so much blood and snow that he looked more like a butchered animal than anything human. He was massive, even collapsed. He took up half her porch. His coat was torn open, dark fabric hanging in strips. One arm was tucked against his ribs. The other stretched out toward her door, fingers still reaching. He'd been trying to knock. Christ, Mara breathed. His eyes cracked open, just barely. Enough for her to see they were pale, almost colorless in the stormlight. They fixed on her face with an intensity that stopped her heart. Then they closed again. Mara stood there, frozen in more ways than one. Every instinct she had screamed at her to go back inside, bar the door, pretend she'd never seen this. She had 4 pounds of flour left, maybe 6 potatoes, a dozen eggs if she was lucky. Barely enough to last the week, and that was only feeding herself. She couldn't afford to save anyone. The man's chest hitched. A wet, rattling sound came from his throat. "God damn it!" Mara grabbed his coat collar with both hands and pulled. He didn't budge. She'd known he was big, but this was something else. It was like trying to move furniture. Her boots slipped on the ice, her shoulders screamed, and he barely shifted an inch. "Come on, you bastard. Work with me." She repositioned, got her legs under her, and hauled with everything she had. This time he moved. Not much, maybe 6 inches, but it was something. She pulled again, then again. Her lungs burned. Her hands were so cold they'd stopped hurting, gone straight to useless. But she kept pulling, dragging him inch by miserable inch across the porch toward her door. Halfway there, her foot slipped. She went down hard, hip smacking against the boards. The impact knocked the air out of her. For a second, she just lay there, gasping, staring up at the black sky and the snow falling into her face. The man's hand moved. It closed around her wrist. Not tight, not threatening, just there. His fingers were ice cold, but his palm was still warm. His eyes opened again, clear this time. "Leave me," he rasped. His voice was deep, scraped raw. It sounded like he'd been screaming. "Shut up," Mara said. She yanked her arm free and stood, grabbed his collar again. "You came to my door. That makes you my problem." She dragged him the rest of the way inside. Odd. Getting him through the door took 5 more minutes and cost her whatever dignity she had left. She had to pull, then prop the door, then pull again, wedging him bit by bit over the threshold until finally, his boots cleared the frame and she could slam the door shut. The silence hit like a physical thing. No more wind, no more screaming storm. Just her bakery, small and dark and freezing, but at least it had walls. Mara collapsed against the door, chest heaving. Her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't make a fist. Every part of her hurt. The man lay sprawled across her floor, bleeding onto the boards she'd scrubbed just yesterday. His breathing was still wrong, too shallow, too fast. Now that they were inside, she could actually see the damage. It was bad. Whatever had happened to him, it hadn't been clean. His coat hung in shreds, the fabric stiff with frozen blood. Underneath, his shirt was soaked through. A long gash ran from his shoulder down across his ribs, deep enough that she could see. Mara looked away. She wasn't squeamish, but there were limits. "All right," she said, more to herself than to him. "All right, you're not dying on my floor. I just cleaned it." She pushed off the door and headed for the back room where she kept her supplies. Medical kit first, which wasn't much, just some bandages and alcohol she usually saved for burns, then water. She'd need to heat it, which meant lighting the stove, which meant using fuel she couldn't spare. She grabbed everything anyway. When she came back, the man hadn't moved. His eyes were closed again. For a horrible second, she thought he'd already gone. But then she saw his chest rise and fall. Still breathing, barely. Mara knelt beside him and started cutting away his coat. The fabric was so stiff with ice and blood that her scissors barely worked. She had to saw through it, layer by layer, until she got down to skin. The gash was worse than she'd thought. It ran from his left shoulder all the way down to his hip, angry and deep. The edges were ragged, like something had torn him open rather than cut him clean. Frost had formed along the wound where the cold had started to freeze the blood. "What the hell did this to you?" she muttered. He didn't answer, probably couldn't. She poured alcohol over the wound. His whole body went rigid. A sound came out of him. Not quite a scream, more like a growl that got caught in his throat. His hand shot out and grabbed her wrist again, hard enough this time that she felt bones grind. "Easy," Mara said. She didn't try to pull away. "Easy. I'm trying to help." His grip stayed locked for another 3 seconds. Then slowly, his fingers loosened, fell away. His eyes opened, just a crack. "Sorry," he breathed. "Don't be. Just don't die." She worked fast after that, cleaned the wound as best she could, though she knew it wasn't enough. A cut like this needed stitches. Needed a real doctor, not a baker with shaking hands and a bottle of cheap vodka. But she didn't have a doctor. Didn't have anything except some bandages and desperation. She wrapped him tight, using every bit of clean cloth she had. His breathing stayed rough, but it didn't get worse. That was something. By the time she finished, her hands were covered in his blood. Mara sat back, staring at them. At him. At the mess she'd just invited into her life. "You better be worth it," she said quietly. She didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. The man's breathing kept changing, sometimes steady, sometimes labored, sometimes stopping altogether for long enough that she'd lurch upright, heart pounding, convinced he'd finally slipped away. But then he'd gasp and keep going. Mara stayed by the stove, feeding it the last of her good firewood, and watching him from across the room. She'd managed to get him onto a blanket at least, so he wasn't directly on the frozen floor. That was the best she could do. Outside, the storm kept howling. The windows rattled in their frames. Snow piled against the door so high she could hear it scratching at the wood. They were completely cut off. No one was coming. No one was leaving. Just her and this dying stranger. Around midnight, he started talking. It wasn't coherent. Fever talk, half delirious. Names she didn't recognize, warnings about things she couldn't see. Once, he tried to sit up, almost made it before collapsing back down. Mara had to press a hand against his chest to keep him from tearing his bandages. "Stay down," she said. "You're safe." "Not," he struggled to focus on her face. "Not safe. Never safe. They'll what?" But he was already gone again, eyes rolling back. Mara pulled her hand away. His skin was burning up under her palm. Fever, getting worse. She grabbed the last of her clean rags, soaked them in cold water, and pressed them against his forehead. His neck. Anywhere she could reach. The fever didn't break, but it didn't spike either. It would have to be enough. Dawn came slowly. The storm didn't let up, but the quality of darkness changed, from absolute black to deep gray. Mara could finally see properly without wasting oil on the lamp. The man looked worse in daylight. Not just injured, worn down. His face was all hard angles and old scars, the kind that came from years of violence, not accidents. His hair was dark, matted with blood and melted snow. He had maybe a week's worth of beard, streaked with gray that didn't match his age. He couldn't be older than 35, maybe 40. But his hands were older, calloused and thick, covered in scars and old burns. Working hands, fighting hands. Mara recognized those hands. "Oh, hell," she whispered. She'd seen him before. Not up close, never up close. But she'd seen him in town. Or rather, she'd seen people's reactions when he came through. The way conversations stopped. The way mothers pulled their children inside. The way men's hands drifted toward weapons they pretended not to carry. Rowan Vance. The hermit from the mountain. The man people whispered about like a ghost story. Some said he'd killed a dozen men. Others said he'd killed more. A few claimed he wasn't a man at all, but something else wearing a man's skin. Stories varied, but everyone agreed on one thing. You didn't go near Rowan Vance unless you wanted trouble. And Mara had just saved his life. Perfect, she said to the empty room. That's just perfect. She stood, paced to the window, stared out at the white nothing beyond the glass. The storm showed no signs of stopping. They could be trapped here for days, maybe a week, if the weather turned really bad. Alone. With a man half the town thought was a murderer. Mara pressed her forehead against the cold glass. What were you thinking? She asked herself. But she knew the answer. She'd been thinking that leaving someone to die wasn't something she could do. Didn't matter who they were. Didn't matter what they'd done. When someone was bleeding on your porch, you helped them, even if it was the stupidest decision you'd ever made. He woke up on the second day. Mara was rationing out breakfast, one egg fried in the last scraping of butter, split between two plates that weren't really two plates anymore, just one plate and a clean board. She'd just finished when she heard movement behind her. She turned. Rowan was sitting up. Not all the way. He'd propped himself against the wall, one arm wrapped around his ribs like he was holding himself together. His face was gray, slicked with sweat, but his eyes were clear, alert, fixed directly on her. Mara's hand tightened around the spatula. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was something. You should be lying down, she said. His gaze tracked around the room, taking inventory. The door, barred, the windows, shuttered, the single exit which she was standing between him and smart. When he spoke, his voice was rough but steady. Where am I? My bakery, Pale Hollow. She paused. You've been here 2 days. 2... He stopped, looked down at himself, at the bandages wrapped around his torso. You did this. It wasn't a question. You were dying on my porch, Mara said. Seemed rude to leave you there. Something crossed his face. Not quite a smile, not quite pain. Rude? Well, it would have been. He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Thank you. Mara hadn't expected that. Wasn't sure what she'd expected, honestly. Violence, maybe. Threats. But not quiet gratitude from a man who supposedly didn't have any humanity left in him. She cleared her throat. Can you eat? I can try. She brought over the board with his half of the egg. He took it with his good hand, stared down at it like he wasn't quite sure what to do with food anymore. It's not much, Mara said, but it's what I've got. It's more than I deserve. He ate slowly, carefully, like every swallow hurt. Probably did. He'd lost a lot of blood. His body was running on fumes. Mara watched him from across the room, still holding the spatula. When he finished, he set the board aside and looked at her again. You know who I am. Not a question. A statement. Yeah, Mara said. I know. And you helped me anyway. Like I said, you were dying. Most people would have let me. I'm not most people. The corner of his mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Might have been a grimace. No, I don't think you are. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the storm rattled the windows. Inside, the stove ticked and popped as it burned through what was left of Mara's fuel. Finally, Rowan spoke again. What do they say about me? Mara considered lying, decided against it. That you killed people. A lot of people. They're not wrong. Her stomach dropped. Oh. War, he said quietly. Long time ago. Different country. But I killed them. He met her eyes. Does that scare you? It should have. Mara knew it should have. But when she looked at him, really looked, she didn't see a monster. She saw a man who'd been hurt and kept going anyway. A man who'd dragged himself through a killing storm to find help. A man who'd apologized for grabbing her wrist. Should it? She asked. He thought about that. Probably. Well, I'm not scared. You should be. Maybe. Mara shrugged. But I'm also not an idiot. You've had 2 days to hurt me. Could have done it while I was asleep, while I was tending your wounds. Hell, you could probably do it right now, injured as you are. I could, he agreed. But you haven't. No. So either you're waiting for something, or you're not the monster everyone thinks you are. She set the spatula down. Which is it? Rowan stared at her. Then slowly, he leaned his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. I don't know, he said. I really don't know. The storm lasted 6 more days. 6 days trapped in a space barely big enough for one person, let alone two. 6 days of rationing food that had already been stretched too thin. 6 days of silence broken only by the wind and the occasional attempts at conversation that never quite went anywhere. By day 3, they were down to potatoes and melted snow. By day 4, just potatoes. By day 5, Mara was staring at the last 2 potatoes like they were made of gold. Rowan watched her from his blanket. He was stronger now, still weak, still hurting, but able to sit up without going gray. Able to think clearly, able to see exactly how bad things were. Give me the smaller one, he said. Mara looked up. What? The potato. Give me the smaller one. They're both the same size. No, they're not. That one's bigger. He pointed. Give me the other one. I'm not. You saved my life. His voice was firm. You gave me your food, your warmth, your supplies. You don't owe me anything, but I owe you everything. He held her gaze. So give me the smaller potato. Mara's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, wanted to split them evenly or give him the bigger one because he needed the calories more or any of a dozen reasonable things. Instead, she handed him the smaller potato. They ate in silence. That night, the wind finally stopped. Mara woke to quiet. Real quiet. The kind that only came after a storm had completely blown itself out. She sat up, heart pounding, and looked toward the window. Gray light filtered through the shutters. Dawn light. It's over, she breathed. Rowan was already awake. He'd been awake for a while, she realized, just sitting there, watching the window like he'd been waiting for this. Storm's done, he said, but the cold isn't. Won't be safe to travel for at least another day. We're out of food. I know. Mara stood, wrapped her blanket around her shoulders, and moved to the window. She cracked the shutter open and looked out. Snow. Everywhere. Piled so high it had buried her porch completely. The world beyond was nothing but white rolling hills where buildings used to be. The street was gone. The other houses were barely visible, just dark shapes under drifts. Pale Hollow had been buried alive. We need supplies, Mara said. Real supplies. Food, fuel, medicine. Town's shut down. No one's selling. Then we'll have to take it. She turned to find Rowan staring at her. You want to steal, he said slowly. I want to survive. Mara's jaw set. I spent everything I had saving you. I don't regret it, but I'm not dying because I was generous. She moved toward him. Can you walk? Probably. Can you walk well? He considered. Well enough. Then we go tonight, after dark. There's a supply shed on the edge of town. Merchant named Carver keeps his winter stock there. He won't even notice if we take a little. He'll notice. Then he can report me. Mara grabbed her coat, but he'll have to catch me first. They left at midnight. The cold was vicious. Not storm cold, but the deep, still cold that came after. The kind that froze your lungs and made every breath hurt. Mara wrapped herself in every layer she owned and still felt naked against it. Rowan moved beside her like a ghost. He was slower than he should have been, favoring his injured side, but he was quiet. Unnaturally quiet. She'd expected him to crunch through the snow, leave tracks, make noise. Instead, he seemed to float across the surface, barely leaving a mark. Mountain training, she realized. He'd lived up there for years. He knew how to move in snow. The shed was a quarter-mile from her bakery, a quarter-mile that felt like 10. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed. Halfway there, she had to stop and catch her breath. Rowan waited without comment. When they reached the shed, he checked the door. Locked, but it was an old lock. Simple. Can you open it? Mara asked. He pulled something from his pocket, a thin piece of metal, bent at an angle. He worked it into the lock, twisted, and something inside clicked. The door swung open. Where did you learn that? Mara breathed. War. He stepped inside. Learned a lot of things I wish I hadn't. The shed was packed, sacks of grain stacked floor to ceiling, crates of preserved vegetables. dried meat hanging from the rafters. More food than Mara had seen in months, more food than she'd ever be able to afford. Just what we need, Rowan said quietly. Don't take more. Don't be greedy. They worked quickly. A sack of flour, some potatoes, a small bundle of dried venison. Enough to last them 2 weeks, maybe 3 if they were careful. Mara was reaching for a second sack when she heard it. Voices. Outside. Getting closer. Rowan's hand clamped over her wrist. He pulled her down behind a stack of crates just as the door swung open. 2 men walked in. Mara recognized them. Carver's sons, doing a night check. They carried lanterns that swung long shadows across the walls. Telling you something's wrong, the younger one was saying. Door wasn't locked proper. You probably just forgot to... I didn't forget nothing. Someone's been here. The older brother raised his lantern, sweeping it across the shed. The light passed right over Mara's hiding spot. She pressed herself smaller, barely breathing. Rowan was utterly still beside her, not tense, not scared, just waiting. The light moved on. Don't see nothing missing, the older brother said. Come on, it's freezing. We should check. We should get inside before we lose our damn toes. Now, come on. They argued for another minute, but eventually the younger one gave in. They left, pulling the door shut behind them. Mara waited until their voices faded completely. Then she let out the breath she'd been holding. That was close, she whispered. Rowan stood, silent. He moved to the door, pressed his ear against it, listening. After a long moment, he nodded. Clear, let's go. They grabbed their supplies and ran. They made it back to the bakery just before dawn. Mara's hands were shaking so badly she could barely bar the door. The moment it was secure, she collapsed against it, heart hammering. We just stole from Carver, she said. Yes. He's going to know. His sons are going to check again. They're going to see... They'll see supplies are missing. Rowan set the sacks down carefully. They won't know who took them. They'll suspect. Let them suspect. He turned to her. You needed food. I helped you get food. That's the end of it. Mara stared at him. At this man who'd lived alone for years, who everyone feared, who'd just committed theft like it was nothing. Why are you helping me? She asked. Rowan was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. You saved my life when you had every reason not to. When it cost you everything. He met her eyes. Where I come from, that creates a debt. And I pay my debts. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. Something in his voice made her chest tighten, made her realize that this wasn't just about debt or honor or any of the things people said when they were trying to be noble. This was about loneliness, about being alone for so long that a simple act of kindness felt like a miracle. Rowan, she said quietly. He looked at her. You're not a monster. His expression cracked. Just for a second, just enough for her to see the man underneath, the one who'd been carrying that weight for years, convinced he deserved it. You don't know that, he said. Yes, I do. Mara pushed off the door. A monster wouldn't have said thank you, wouldn't have tried to give me the bigger potato, wouldn't have protected me in that shed. She stepped closer. You're not what they say you are. You don't know what I've done. I know what you've done for me. That's enough. They stood there facing each other in the gray dawn light. Outside, Pale Hollow was starting to wake up. Smoke rose from chimneys, doors creaked open. Life continued, hard and cold and indifferent. But inside this small bakery, something had shifted, something that neither of them had names for yet. Rowan broke the silence first. Storm will be gone by tomorrow. Roads will start clearing. I should leave. Where will you go? Back to the mountain. He glanced toward the window. It's where I belong. That's a lonely place. It's safe. Safe from what? He didn't answer, but Mara saw it in his eyes, the same thing she'd seen in the mirror every morning for the past 5 years. Fear, not of dying, but of living, of letting anyone close enough to hurt you, of being seen. You could stay, she heard herself say. Rowan's head snapped toward her. What? Just for a while, until you're fully healed. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. I could use the help. Winter's not over. And you said it yourself, you owe me a debt. Marsh, Besides, if you leave now, people will ask questions. Where you've been? Who helped you? She forced a smile. But if you stay, work for me, earn your keep, that's just business. Nothing suspicious about that. It was a terrible plan. She knew it was a terrible plan even as she said it. Having Rowan Vance stay in Pale Hollow was like keeping dynamite in your basement. Sooner or later, something would set him off. But she didn't want him to go. The realization hit her like a punch. She didn't want him to leave. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Rowan studied her face, looking for something. A lie, maybe. Or an angle. Some ulterior motive that made sense. Whatever he was looking for, he didn't find it. All right, he said finally. I'll stay. Mara's heart jumped. Yeah? For a while, until I'm healed. He paused. Or until you want me gone. Fair enough. They shook on it. His hand was warm and rough and steady. Outside, the sun was rising over Pale Hollow. A new day, a new arrangement, and neither of them had any idea what they'd just started. The arrangement worked for exactly 3 days before people started talking. Mara heard it first at the well. She'd gone early, hoping to avoid the usual crowd, but Martha Hendricks was already there with her daughter. The conversation died the moment Mara appeared. Morning, Mara said, keeping her voice neutral. Martha nodded, didn't smile. Her daughter stared openly, eyes wide. Mara filled her buckets in silence, the whole time feeling their eyes on her back. When she turned to leave, Martha finally spoke. Heard you got help at the bakery. Mara's grip tightened on the bucket handles. News travels fast. It does when it's that kind of news. Martha's voice wasn't unkind, but it wasn't friendly either. People are wondering. Wondering what? If you know what you're doing. Mara met her eyes. I know exactly what I'm doing. Do you? Martha stepped closer, lowering her voice. That man. Mara, he's dangerous. Everyone knows it. Everyone thinks they know it. There's a difference. He killed people. So did half the men in this town who went to war. You planning to run them out too? Martha's jaw tightened. That's different. Is it? They stared at each other. Finally, Martha shook her head. Just be careful. That's all I'm saying. She left, daughter in tow. Mara stood alone by the well, watching them go. When she got back to the bakery, Rowan was chopping wood in the side yard. He'd insisted on starting work immediately, despite the fact that his wound was barely healed. Stubborn bastard wouldn't listen to reason. He stopped when he saw her face. What happened? Nothing. Mara set the buckets down harder than necessary. Just the usual small-town bullshit. They know I'm here. Of course they know. Pale Hollow has 200 people and nothing to do but gossip. She yanked open the door. Don't worry about it. But Rowan followed her inside, closing the door behind him. Mara, I said don't worry about it. If my being here causes you problems, it doesn't. I can leave. Go back to the mountain like I planned. Mara spun to face him. Is that what you want? To go hide in the woods again? Something flickered across his expression. No. Then stay. Help me run this place. Let them talk. She grabbed her apron off the hook. I've been the subject of gossip before. I'll survive. Rowan studied her for a long moment. What did they say about you? Does it matter? Yes. Mara sighed, tied the apron strings with more force than necessary. My husband died 4 years ago, logging accident. After that, I tried to keep the bakery going, but she trailed off, staring at the empty counter. Turns out people don't like buying bread from a woman alone. Bad luck, they said. Some other nonsense about proper grieving periods and remarriage. That's stupid? Yeah, but it's how things work here. She started pulling out bowls, measuring flour from their stolen supplies. So I learned to not care what people think. You should too. Rowan was quiet. Then, your husband. You loved him. The question caught her off guard. She stopped measuring, hands frozen over the bowl. I married him, she said carefully. That's what you did. You found someone decent, someone who could provide, and you married them. That's not what I asked. Mara looked at him, really looked. He wasn't judging, wasn't prying, just asking, like he genuinely wanted to know. He was a good man, she said finally. Kind, fair. He didn't hit me, didn't drink too much, worked hard. She poured the flour. But love, I don't know. Maybe I didn't know what love was supposed to feel like. And now? Now I know it feels like freedom. Rowan's expression shifted, something in his eyes that made her chest tight. Before either of them could say more, someone pounded on the door. Mara jumped. Rowan's hand went to his belt, to a knife she hadn't realized he was carrying. "Easy," she murmured. She crossed to the door, cracked it open. A boy stood on her porch, maybe 12, face red from running. Tommy Carver, the merchant's youngest son. Mara's stomach dropped. "Miss Quinn," Tommy panted. "My pa wants to see you, says it's important." "About what?" "Didn't say, just said come now." The boy glanced past her, trying to see inside. His eyes widened when he spotted Rowan. "I'll come this afternoon," Mara said. "He said now, miss." "I'm working." "Please." "He said," Tommy lowered his voice. "He said, if you don't come, he'll come here, and he won't come alone." Threat received, message clear. Mara forced a smile. "Tell your father I'll be there within the hour." Tommy nodded and took off running. Mara closed the door, leaned against it. "That was about the supplies," Rowan said. "Probably. I'll come with you." "No!" She pushed off the door. "That'll make it worse. If Carver thinks you're protecting me or something, he'll use it. I need to handle this myself." "Mara, I mean it." She grabbed her coat. "Stay here. Keep your head down. I'll deal with Carver." Rowan looked like he wanted to argue, but after a moment, he nodded. "Be careful." "Always am." She left before she could change her mind. Carver's store sat at the center of town, a 2-story building that served as general store, post office, and unofficial town hall. The man himself stood behind the counter when Mara walked in, counting coins with thick fingers. He didn't look up. "Miss Quinn, good of you to come." "Your boy said it was urgent." "It is." Carver finished his count, made a note in his ledger, finally looked at her. "I'm missing supplies from my shed, flour, potatoes, dried meat." Mara kept her face blank. "That's unfortunate." "Very. Especially since it happened the night after the big storm, when the snow was still deep, when only someone desperate or someone stupid would be out moving around." "Sounds like you have a theory." "I have facts." Carver closed his ledger with a heavy thump. "You were struggling before the storm. Everyone knew it. Then suddenly you're baking again, selling bread. Where'd the flour come from, Miss Quinn?" "I had reserves." "Did you?" "Yes." They stared at each other. Carver's eyes were small and mean, the kind that enjoyed catching people in lies. "Here's what I think," he said slowly. "I think you stole from me. I think you were starving, got desperate, and decided to help yourself to my property." "You have proof?" "Don't need proof. I have suspicion, and in a town this size, that's enough." He leaned forward. "But I'm a reasonable man. I'm willing to forget this happened. For a price." There it was. The real reason he'd called her here. "What price?" Mara asked. "Your property." She blinked. "What?" "That little bakery of yours sits on a prime corner lot. Been wanting it for years. Your husband wouldn't sell. You won't sell." Carver smiled. "But if you're a thief, well, that changes things. Sign the deed over to me and we'll call this matter settled." Anger flared hot in Mara's chest. "You son of a—" "Careful." Carver's smile didn't waver. "I'd hate for this to become an official matter. Theft is a serious crime. Could mean jail time. Could mean worse." Mara's hands curled into fists. She wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted to burn his store down around his ears. Instead, she took a breath. "I didn't steal from you," she said evenly. "And I'm not signing anything. If you want to accuse me officially, go ahead. But you'll need proof. And we both know you don't have any." She turned to leave. "I'll find proof," Carver called after her. "And when I do, you'll lose more than just your bakery." Mara kept walking, didn't look back, didn't give him the satisfaction, but her hands were shaking when she reached the street. She made it 2 blocks before someone grabbed her arm. Mara spun, fist already raised, but it was just Rowan. He'd followed her. Of course he had. "I told you to stay," she snapped. "And I didn't listen." He scanned her face. What did he say? Exactly what we thought he'd say. He knows someone stole from him. He's guessing it was me. Did you deny it? Of course I denied it. Mara pulled her arm free. Not that it matters. He doesn't care about proof. He just wants my property. Your bakery. It's on a good corner. He's been trying to buy it for years. She started walking again, faster now. He's using this as leverage. Sign over the deed or he reports me for theft. Rowan fell into step beside her. He can't prove anything. He doesn't have to. A rumor is enough to destroy me in this town. They walked in silence for a while. The street was busy with midday traffic, people buying, selling, gossiping. A few heads turned as they passed. More than a few. They're staring, Mara muttered. Let them. Easy for you to say. You don't have a business to run. Neither do you if Carver takes it. Mara stopped walking, turned to face him. What are you suggesting? Rowan met her eyes. I'm suggesting we don't let him. And how exactly do we stop him? By giving him something else to worry about. There was something in his voice, something dark and certain. It made Mara's pulse quicken. Rowan, what are you planning? He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Trust me. That night, Carver's shed caught fire. Not the whole thing, just one corner where the oldest supplies were stored. The fire burned hot and fast, destroying a season's worth of spoiled grain and rotten vegetables before anyone could stop it. By the time the town formed a bucket brigade, it was already over. The damage was contained. No one hurt, just a lot of ruined stock and one very angry merchant. Mara heard about it the next morning. She was kneading dough when Martha's daughter burst through the door, breathless with news. Did you hear? Carver's shed burned. Mara's hand stilled. Burned? Last night. Someone saw smoke around midnight. By the time they raised the alarm, the girl shook her head. Could have been worse, could have spread to the other buildings, but it didn't, so that's lucky. Very lucky, Mara said faintly. The girl bought 2 loaves and left, still chattering. The moment she was gone, Mara rounded on Rowan. He was sitting by the stove, whittling a piece of wood with that knife of his. He didn't look up. You burned his shed, Mara said. Did I? Rowan, I didn't burn anything. He kept whittling, steady and calm. I was here all night. You can vouch for that. That's not... You can't just... Mara struggled for words. What if someone had been hurt? No one was hurt. I made sure of it. How? Finally, he looked up. I spent 3 years living in the mountains, Mara. I know how to start a fire that burns exactly where I want it to burn. I know how to make sure it doesn't spread, and I know how to not get caught. She stared at him. This is insane. This is survival. He set down his knife. Carver threatened you. He tried to take your home, so I gave him a reminder that he's not untouchable. By committing arson? By evening the scales. Rowan stood cross to her. You think men like Carver respond to reason, to fairness? They don't. They respond to force, to consequences. Now he knows that coming after you has a price. Mara's heart was hammering. If anyone finds out, they won't. You don't know that. I do. His voice was utterly certain. And even if they did, they'd have to prove it, which they can't, because I was here with you all night. He was standing close now, close enough that she could see the scar that ran through his eyebrow, close enough to smell wood smoke and pine and something underneath that was just him. Why? She asked quietly. Why would you risk this for me? Rowan's expression softened. Because you're the first person in 5 years who looked at me like I was human. Because you saved my life when you had nothing to spare. Because... He trailed off, looked away. Because I'm tired of hiding. Something shifted in Mara's chest, something that felt dangerous and inevitable and absolutely terrifying. You're insane, she whispered. Probably. And if this backfires, it won't. But if it does... Rowan caught her hand, held it. His palm was warm and rough and steady against hers. Then we deal with it together. Mara looked down at their joined hands, at this connection that shouldn't exist, that made no sense, that was going to get them both killed or worse. She didn't pull away. Together, she repeated. Together. And just like that, the alliance shifted into something deeper, something neither of them had a name for yet. The town's reaction to the fire was swift and predictable. Carver offered a reward for information, accused everyone and no one, hired men to guard his remaining buildings, made a lot of noise about justice and thieves. But he didn't come after Mara again. Whatever Rowan's plan had been, it worked. For about 2 weeks, everything went quiet. Mara baked. Rowan worked. They fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Then the mayor called a town meeting. The notice went up on a Tuesday. Meeting Friday evening, mandatory attendance, important town business. No details beyond that. This is about the land, Rowan said when he saw the notice. What land? The railroad land. The development project. He turned to her. You haven't heard? Mara shook her head. I don't pay attention to town politics. You should. There's a railroad company trying to buy up property along the planned route. They're offering good money, better than most of these plots are worth. So let them buy. It's not that simple. Some people don't want to sell. The mayor's been pushing hard, trying to force the deal through. Rowan's jaw tightened. Your bakery sits right in the middle of the proposed route. The words took a moment to sink in. When they did, Mara's stomach dropped. I'm saying this meeting isn't about town business. It's about you. Friday came too fast. Mara dressed in her best, which wasn't saying much, and walked to the town hall with Rowan at her side. People stared, whispered, made way for them like they were contagious. The hall was packed, every seat taken, people standing along the walls. At the front, Mayor Graves stood behind a podium, looking pleased with himself. He waited until everyone settled before speaking. Thank you all for coming. I'll keep this brief. He cleared his throat. As many of you know, the Continental Railroad has proposed a new route through Pale Hollow. This is a tremendous opportunity for our town. Jobs, commerce, growth. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. However, Graves continued, the route requires certain properties. Most owners have already agreed to sell at fair prices, but a few holdouts remain. His eyes found Mara. Miss Quinn, your bakery sits directly in the path. We need you to sell. Mara stood. Every eye in the room turned to her. And if I don't want to sell? Then you're standing in the way of progress, standing in the way of what's best for this entire community. What's best for the community, Mara said slowly, or what's best for you? Graves's expression hardened. I don't know what you're implying. I'm implying that someone's making money off this deal, and I'm guessing it's not the people being forced to sell their property. The room erupted, people shouting, arguing, pointing. Graves banged his gavel, trying to restore order. Miss Quinn, if you refuse to sell, the town council has the authority to seize the property through eminent domain. You'll be compensated, but the amount will be considerably less than what we're offering now. That's theft. That's the law. Mara opened her mouth to argue, but Rowan's hand on her arm stopped her. He stood, his full height drawing every eye. How much? He asked. Graves blinked. Excuse me? How much are you offering for her property? That's between Miss Quinn and… How much? The room had gone dead silent. Graves looked uncomfortable for the first time. $300, he said finally. Someone gasped. 300 was insultingly low. Everyone knew it. The property's worth at least 2,000, Rowan said. Probably more. The railroad's offer is non-negotiable. Then we're not interested. Rowan's voice was calm, final. Miss Quinn keeps her property. Graves' face flushed red. This isn't your decision to make, Vance. No, it's hers, and she's made it. Mara's heart was pounding. She should probably say something, confirm or deny. But her throat had closed up, words stuck somewhere between her brain and her mouth. Graves slammed his gavel. This meeting is adjourned. Miss Quinn, you have 1 week to reconsider. After that, the council will vote on seizure. He stormed out. The crowd broke apart, everyone talking at once. Mara stood frozen, overwhelmed. Rowan's hand found hers. Come on, he said quietly. Let's go home. Home. He'd said home, like her bakery was his too now. Maybe it was. They walked back in silence. The moon was up, casting long shadows across the snow. Pale Hollow looked almost peaceful in the silver light, almost beautiful. "I can't fight the whole town," Mara said finally. "You're not fighting the town. You're fighting Graves and whoever's backing him. Same difference." "No, it's not." Rowan stopped walking, turned to face her. "Most people in there didn't even know about this deal. You saw their faces. They were as surprised as you were." "Surprise doesn't mean they'll help." "Maybe not, but it means they're paying attention now." He squeezed her hand. "We just need to find out who's really behind this, follow the money, expose the corruption. And how do we do that?" Rowan smiled, that dark, dangerous smile that made her nervous and excited in equal measure. "We break into Graves's office." Mara's eyes went wide. "Are you dead serious? Whatever proof exists, it'll be there. Contracts, correspondence, payment records. We find it, we expose him, the whole deal falls apart." Rowan, that's insane." "So was saving my life. So was stealing from Carver. So was standing up to an entire town." He cupped her face with his free hand. "You're already in this fight, Mara. Might as well win it." She should say no. Should be reasonable. Should find some legal, safe, sensible way to handle this. Instead, she heard herself say, "When?" "Tomorrow night, during the church service. Everyone will be there." "Not everyone." "Everyone who matters." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "Trust me." Mara looked up at him. At this man who'd appeared on her porch half dead and somehow become the most important person in her life. At this alliance that had turned into something neither of them would admit out loud. "I do," she said. "I trust you." Rowan's expression shifted, softened. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, but he just nodded and stepped back. "Good. Then let's go commit some crimes." They spent the next day preparing. Rowan scouted the mayor's office, memorized the layout, identified entry points. Mara gathered supplies, dark clothes, a good lantern, rope just in case. It felt surreal, like playing at being criminals, like a game that could get them killed. But it also felt right, like for the first time in years she was actually fighting back instead of just surviving. Sunday evening came. The church bells rang, calling people to service. Mara and Rowan watched from the bakery window as the street emptied. "Ready?" Rowan asked. Mara took a breath. "Ready." They moved through the dark streets like ghosts. The mayor's office was attached to the town hall, a small brick building with barred windows and a heavy door. Rowan checked the lock, frowned. "Different from the shed. This'll take time." "How much time?" 5 minutes? Maybe 10? He pulled out his tools. "Keep watch." Mara positioned herself at the corner, eyes scanning the street. Her heart hammered so hard she could feel it in her throat. Every shadow looked like a person, every sound like footsteps. Behind her she heard soft metallic clicking, Rowan working the lock. "Come on," she muttered. "Come on." Click. The door swung open. "We're in," Rowan whispered. They slipped inside, closing the door behind them. Mara lit the lantern, keeping the flame low. The office was small, cluttered with papers and books. A desk dominated the center, drawers locked. "Start with the desk," Rowan said. "I'll check the files." Mara set to work. The first drawer opened easily, just office supplies. The second was locked. She tried the third, the fourth, all locked. Rowan. He was already there with his tools. One by one, he opened the drawers. The third one held what they were looking for. A contract. Signed by Mayor Graves and someone named Harrison Voss, representing the railroad company. But the numbers didn't match what Graves had said at the meeting. The railroad was paying $50,000 for the full route. Graves was offering landowners a fraction of that. "He's pocketing the difference," Mara breathed. "That lying son of a—" "Keep looking. We need more than one document." They found it all. Correspondence detailing the scheme. A list of properties, marked sold or pending. Payment receipts showing money flowing from Voss to Graves. Everything they needed to prove corruption. Mara was gathering the papers when she heard it. Footsteps. Outside, getting closer. "Someone's coming," she hissed. Rowan grabbed her arm. "Back door. Now." They ran. Mara clutched the papers to her chest, Rowan leading the way through the dark office. They reached the back door just as the front one opened. Positive I locked it, a voice was saying. Graves. Rowan threw the back door open. They spilled out into the alley, papers flying. Mara scrambled to gather them as shouting erupted behind them. Run, Rowan ordered. They ran. Through alleys, over fences, past dark houses and empty streets. Mara's lungs burned. Her legs screamed, but she kept going, Rowan right beside her, until finally they burst through the bakery door and slammed it shut. Mara collapsed against the counter, gasping. Did they see us? I don't think so. Rowan was breathing hard too, but his eyes were bright. Alive. We got it. We actually got it. Mara looked down at the papers in her hands. Evidence, proof, justice, and a death sentence if Graves figured out who'd taken them. What now? She asked. Rowan met her eyes. Now we take the fight beyond Pale Hollow. We find someone with the power to make this stick. A judge, a lawyer, someone who can't be bought. Where? Capital City, 3 days' ride south. 3 days. Away from the bakery. Away from everything she knew. Mara should have been terrified. Instead, she felt free. When do we leave? She asked. Rowan smiled. First light. They didn't make it to first light. Mara was stuffing supplies into a travel bag when she smelled it. Smoke. Not wood smoke from a stove. Something sharper, closer. She dropped the bag and ran to the window. Orange light flickered against the glass. Dancing shadows. Heat that she could feel even through the pain. Rowan, she said. Her voice came out strangled. He was at her side in seconds, looked out, swore viciously. The building across the street was burning. Flames crawled up the walls, eating through wood and plaster like they were hungry. Black smoke poured into the night sky. That's the Hendricks place, Mara whispered. Martha and her daughter. They're not there. Look. He was right. People were already in the street, forming bucket lines, shouting. Martha stood wrapped in a blanket, her daughter crying against her side. They'd gotten out, but the fire kept spreading, jumping to the next building, then the next, coming straight toward the bakery. We need to go, Rowan said. Now. My home will burn whether you're in it or not. Move. He grabbed her arm, pulled her toward the back door. Mara resisted for half a second, looking around at the bakery that had been hers, that she'd fought for, that she'd nearly starved to keep. Then the front window exploded inward, glass spraying across the floor, and she stopped resisting. They ran, out the back into the alley, Rowan still gripping her wrist. Behind them, the fire roared. Mara could hear it eating her bakery, consuming everything she owned. The heat chased them down the alley like something alive. This way. Rowan pulled her left toward the edge of town. Where are we going? Away from the fire. Away from... He stopped so suddenly that Mara crashed into his back. 3 men blocked the alley ahead. She recognized one of them, Carver's oldest son, the one from the supply shed. The other 2 were strangers. Big men with hard faces. They weren't there to help with the fire. Well, the Carver boy said, look what we found. Rowan shifted, putting himself between Mara and the men. Move. Can't do that. See, my father wants a word with Miss Quinn here about some stolen property. Not interested. Wasn't asking. The boy smiled. It was an ugly expression. You can hand her over peaceful, or we can do this the other way. Rowan's hand went to his belt. To the knife Mara knew he kept there. Try it, he said quietly. The smile dropped off the Carver boy's face. You threatening us? I'm making a promise. Touch her, and I'll kill you. The words hung in the air, flat, certain. Mara's heart hammered against her ribs. One of the strangers laughed. Big talk from one man. It's not talk. And then everything happened at once. The stranger lunged. Rowan moved faster, sidestepping, his knife already out. The blade caught firelight as it flashed across the man's arm. Not deep, just enough to draw blood and make him stumble back, swearing. The second stranger charged from the other side. Rowan spun, but he was still weak from his injuries, still not at full strength. The man caught him around the waist, drove him into the alley wall. Rowan's head cracked against brick. His knife clattered to the ground. No! Mara dove for the knife. The Carver boy caught her halfway. His hands locked around her arms, yanking her backward. She twisted, fought, kicked, connected with his shin hard enough to make him grunt. His grip tightened. Feisty, Pa said you were trouble. Let me go. Not a chance. Behind them, Rowan was fighting. She could hear impacts, grunts of pain, the wet sound of fists on flesh. She couldn't tell who was winning. Mara did the only thing she could think of. She snapped her head backward, felt her skull connect with the Carver boy's nose. He howled, grip loosening. She tore free, grabbed Rowan's knife from the ground, spun. The boy was clutching his face, blood streaming between his fingers. You broke my nose. Good, Mara snarled. She looked past him. Rowan had one man on the ground, unconscious or dead. She couldn't tell. The other stranger had him in a chokehold from behind. Rowan's face was going red, his hand scrabbling at the arm cutting off his air. Mara ran. She hit the stranger low, knife first, burying the blade in his thigh. He screamed and let Rowan go. Rowan dropped to his knees, gasping. The stranger backhanded Mara so hard she saw stars. She hit the ground, tasted blood. The Carver boy was on his feet again, still bleeding, murder in his eyes. You're dead. Both of you are... A gunshot cracked through the air. Everyone froze. Sheriff Davies stepped into the alley, pistol raised. He was an old man, gray-haired and thin, but his hands were steady. That's enough, he said. The Carver boy started to speak. Sheriff, these two... I said enough. Davies's eyes swept the scene, took in the injured men, Mara on the ground with blood on her mouth, Rowan gasping against the wall. What the hell is going on here? They attacked us, the Carver boy said quickly. We were trying to help with the fire and they... That's a lie, Mara said. She climbed to her feet, swaying. They cornered us, threatened us, started the fight. She's lying. The boy pointed at his broken nose. Look what she did. Davies was quiet for a long moment. Behind them, the fire still raged. People were shouting, running, trying to save what they could. The whole town was chaos. Finally, the sheriff sighed. Everyone go home. We'll sort this out tomorrow. But I said go home. Davies' voice hardened. Now, before I arrest all of you. The Carver boy looked like he wanted to argue, but after a moment he helped his injured friends up and limped away, still bleeding. Davies watched them go, then turned to Mara and Rowan. You two, with me. He didn't wait for an answer, just turned and walked back toward the main street. Mara looked at Rowan. He nodded, still catching his breath. They followed. Davies led them away from the fire to a small house on the quiet edge of town. His house, Mara realized. He unlocked the door and gestured them inside. The interior was spare, clean, a bachelor's home. Davies pointed to chairs by the fireplace. Sit. They sat. Mara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Rowan had a cut above his eye, blood trickling down his temple. Davies poured 3 glasses of whiskey, handed them over, drank his own in one swallow. Now, he said, tell me what really happened. Mara and Rowan exchanged glances. How much to tell? How much to trust? We were leaving town, Mara said carefully. Those men stopped us. Leaving town, in the middle of a fire. The fire started near my bakery. We ran. Convenient timing. What's that supposed to mean? Davies refilled his glass. It means your bakery's the 3rd building to catch fire tonight. It means the fires all started around the same time, in a pattern that doesn't look accidental. He fixed them with a hard stare. It means someone set those fires deliberately. Mara's stomach dropped. You think we... I don't know what to think. I know you've been causing trouble. Know you broke into the mayor's office last night. Rowan tensed. We didn't... Don't bother lying. Graves knows his files were rifled through, knows documents are missing. Davies leaned forward. So I'll ask you straight. Did you set those fires? No, Mara said. We would never... Why would we burn our own home? To cover your escape, to destroy evidence, to create chaos. Davies shrugged. Take your pick. We didn't do it. Then who did? Silence. Mara's mind raced. Who had the motive? Who stood to gain from burning her out? The answer hit her like ice water. Graves, she said. It was Graves. Davies raised an eyebrow. Bold accusation. Not an accusation. A fact. She pulled the folded documents from inside her coat. They'd survived the fire, the fight, everything. She spread them on Davies's table. Look. Contracts, payment records, proof that Graves is stealing from the railroad deal. Davies examined the papers. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Where did you get these? Does it matter? It does if I'm going to use them. We took them from his office, Rowan said. Last night, we needed proof of what he was doing. By breaking the law yourselves. By exposing a bigger crime, Mara's voice rose. He's cheating the whole town, Sheriff. Pocketing thousands while forcing people to sell for nothing, and now he's burning us out to cover it up. Davies was quiet. He read through the document slowly, thoroughly. Mara watched his face, trying to read his thoughts. Was he corrupt too? Was he part of Graves's scheme? Finally, he set the papers down. These are real, he said. Relief flooded through Mara. So you'll help us. I'll do my job, which means investigating these allegations properly, following procedure. By the time you follow procedure, we'll be dead. Davies's jaw tightened. I understand your concern, but I can't just arrest the mayor based on stolen documents. I need more. Witnesses, testimony, a proper case. We don't have time for... A crash outside cut her off. Shouting, the sound of breaking glass. Davies was on his feet instantly, hand going to his gun. Stay here. He slipped out the door. Mara and Rowan sat frozen, listening to the chaos outside. More shouting, running footsteps. Then a gunshot, sharp and clear. We need to leave, Rowan said. Right now. Davies told us to stay. Davies isn't in control anymore. Listen. Mara listened. The shouting was getting closer, organized, someone giving orders. Find them. Check every house. Her blood went cold. They weren't just looking for fire starters. They were hunting. Rowan grabbed her hand. Back door, move. They ran again, out through Davies' kitchen, into another alley. The town was pure chaos now, half of it burning, the other half running in panic. Mara couldn't tell who was trying to fight fires and who was searching for them. Where do we go? She gasped. Out. We get out of town, lose them in the woods. It's dark. It's freezing. We don't have supplies. We have our lives. That's enough. They made it 2 blocks before someone spotted them. A shout went up. Suddenly there were men everywhere, appearing from doorways and alleys like they'd been waiting. There! Get them! Rowan pulled Mara left down a narrow passage between buildings. It dead-ended at a fence. He boosted her up, practically throwing her over. She landed hard on the other side, ankle twisting. Pain shot up her leg. I'm fine, she lied, climbing to her feet. Come on! Rowan vaulted the fence behind her. They kept running. The edge of town loomed ahead, past the last houses, past the last lights, into the dark woods that surrounded Pale Hollow, like a cage. They were almost there when the shot rang out. Rowan jerked, stumbled, caught himself against a wall. Rowan! Mara grabbed him. Are you hit? Keep going, he growled. Don't stop. But there was blood. She could see it spreading across his side, black in the moonlight, right where his old wound had been. You're bleeding. I said keep going. He shoved her forward. They crashed into the tree line together. Branches whipped at Mara's face. Roots tried to trip her, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Behind them, voices shouted, torches bobbed in the darkness. The hunters were coming. Rowan was slowing. Each breath came harder. The blood kept flowing. We need to hide, Mara panted. You need to rest. No time. They'll track us. Need to get distance first. You're going to bleed out. Not the first time. He tried to smile, failed. His face had gone gray. They stumbled on through the woods. Minutes passed, maybe hours. Mara lost track. All she knew was the cold, the dark, Rowan's weight getting heavier against her side. Finally, they found a hollow, a cluster of fallen trees creating a small shelter. Rowan collapsed into it without a word. Mara knelt beside him, hands shaking. Let me see. She pulled his coat open. The bullet had punched through his side, right through the old wound. Blood poured out, hot and fast, too fast. It went through, Rowan said. His voice was faint. That's good. Means it didn't lodge. You're still bleeding. Apply pressure, like before. Mara tore strips from her shirt, pressed them against the wound. Rowan hissed, but didn't pull away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is my fault. If I hadn't stolen those documents—" "You did. What you had to." He caught her wrist. His grip was weak. "Don't regret it. You're dying." "Maybe. Maybe not." He managed a real smile this time, small and tired, but real. "Surprised me before. Might surprise you again." Tears stung Mara's eyes. "Don't you dare die on me, Rowan Vance, not after everything." "Wouldn't dream of it." His eyes closed. For a horrible moment, she thought he was gone. Then his chest rose, fell, rose again, still breathing, still fighting. Mara held pressure on the wound and listened to the sounds of the forest. The hunters were out there, somewhere, looking for them. But they had a head start. And darkness. And Rowan, who'd survived worse than this. They just had to make it through the night. Dawn came slowly, painted the sky gray and cold. Mara hadn't slept, couldn't. She'd stayed awake, watching Rowan, listening for pursuit. The bleeding had slowed. That was good. His breathing was steady. Also good. But his skin was cold. Too cold. And when she touched his forehead, he was burning up. Fever. Again. "We need water," she said aloud. "Shelter. Medicine." Rowan's eyes cracked open. "Town?" "No, they'll be watching. We need—" She trailed off, thinking. "Your cabin, on the mountain. Can we make it?" "Maybe, if we move now, before they widen the search." "Can you walk?" He tried to sit up, made it halfway before collapsing back with a curse. "I'll manage." It took 20 minutes to get him on his feet, another 10 to start moving. They stumbled through the woods like the wounded animals they were. Every step hurt, every breath was work. But they kept going. The mountain loomed ahead, Rowan's territory, the place he'd lived alone for 5 years. If they could reach it, they'd be safe. Maybe. Halfway up, Rowan collapsed. Mara tried to catch him, failed. They both went down, rolling in dead leaves and snow. "I'm sorry," Rowan gasped. "Can't. Need a minute." "It's okay. Rest." But they didn't have a minute. Voices drifted up from below, distant but getting closer. The hunters had picked up their trail. Mara looked around wildly. They were exposed here, visible. If those men came up the slope, they'd be spotted for sure. "There," Rowan pointed with a shaking hand. "Cave. Small one. 50 feet. That direction." Mara saw it. A dark gap between boulders, barely wide enough to crawl through. "Can you make it?" "Have to." She got him upright again. They staggered toward the cave, slipping on ice, grabbing at rocks for support. Rowan's breath came in ragged gasps. The wound had opened again, fresh blood soaked through the makeshift bandages. They reached the cave. Mara shoved Rowan through first, then squeezed in after him. The space inside was tiny, dark, barely room for 2 people, but it was hidden, protected, safe. Rowan slumped against the rock wall. His eyes were glazed. The fever was getting worse. "Stay with me," Mara said. She grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. "Rowan, stay with me. Trying. Try harder." Outside, the voices got closer. Mara held her breath, pressed herself against Rowan in the tight space. She could feel his heart beating, fast and irregular. The hunters passed within 20 feet of the cave. She could hear them arguing about which way to go. One wanted to keep climbing. Another said to spread out, check the ravines. Finally, they moved on. The voices faded. Mara let out the breath she'd been holding. "They're gone." Rowan didn't respond. His eyes had closed again. "Rowan?" Nothing. Panic clawed at her throat. She pressed her fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse. Found it. Weak, but there. "Okay," she said to herself. "Okay. You can do this. You've done it before." She'd saved him once. In her bakery, when he was half dead and bleeding out. She could do it again. Had to. Because somewhere between that frozen night and this moment, Rowan Vance had stopped being a monster, stopped being a stranger, stopped being anything except the person she couldn't imagine living without. And she'd be damned if she let him die now. Mara pulled him closer, shared her warmth in the cold cave, and started planning their survival. 3 days they stayed in that cave. 3 days of Rowan drifting in and out of consciousness while Mara kept him alive through sheer stubbornness. She melted snow for water, scavenged for anything edible, changed his bandages with strips torn from her own clothes. On the second day, his fever broke. On the third, he woke up clear-headed. "You're still here," he said. His voice was rough but stronger. "Where else would I be?" "Smart thing. Would have been to leave me. Save yourself." Mara snorted. "When have I ever done the smart thing?" That got a smile. Faint but real. "Fair point." She helped him sit up, gave him water. He drank slowly, carefully, like his body had forgotten how to do basic things and needed to relearn. "We can't stay here," he said finally. "They'll keep searching." "I know, but you can barely move." "I can move enough. My cabin's not far, maybe 2 miles north. We make it there, we'll have real shelter, supplies." 2 miles in your condition? I've walked farther on worse. He met her eyes. "Trust me." She did. That was the problem. "All right, but we go slow, and if you collapse again, we stop. No arguments." "Deal." They left the cave at dusk. Rowan leaned heavily on Mara, his arm across her shoulders. Each step was careful, measured, but he was walking. The forest was quiet, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. They'd gone maybe half a mile when Rowan stopped. "What?" Mara whispered. "Someone's following us." Ice slid down her spine. "How do you know?" "I can feel it. Movement, maybe 100 yards back." "The hunters?" "Maybe. Or something else." They started moving faster, as fast as Rowan could manage. His breathing got labored. The wound started bleeding again, but he didn't slow down. Behind them, something crashed through the underbrush. Definitely following, definitely closing distance. "Run," Rowan said. "I'm not leaving. Not asking you to leave, just run. Both of us. Now." They ran, or tried to. Rowan stumbled every few steps. Mara caught him, kept him upright, kept them moving. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed. But she didn't stop. The cabin appeared ahead, small and dark and beautiful. They crashed through the door. Rowan immediately grabbed a rifle from above the fireplace, checked the chamber, loaded. "Get behind me," he ordered. Mara obeyed. Her heart hammered. Outside, footsteps approached, slow, deliberate. A knock at the door. Rowan raised the rifle. The door opened. Sheriff Davies stood on the threshold, hands raised. "Easy, I'm alone." Rowan didn't lower the rifle. "How did you find us?" "Tracked you. I'm old, not incompetent." Davies looked at them both. At Rowan's bloody bandages, Mara's torn clothes, the desperation in their eyes. "Can I come in? I'd rather not get shot on your porch." After a long moment, Rowan lowered the rifle. Davies stepped inside, closed the door, looked around the sparse cabin. "So this is where you've been hiding all these years." "What do you want?" Mara asked. "To help." Davies pulled something from his coat, the stolen documents. "These are real. I verified every signature, every payment. Graves is guilty. So is Carver. So is half the town council." "Then arrest them." "I can't. Not alone. They've got men, power, money." He looked at Mara. "But you two can, if you're willing to fight." "We've been fighting," Rowan said quietly. "It hasn't worked." "Because you've been fighting wrong, hiding, running, trying to survive." Davies set the documents on the table. "But survival isn't enough anymore. You need to win. And to win, you need to go on the offensive." Mara's hands curled into fists. "How?" Davies smiled. It was a sharp smile, a dangerous smile. "By making them come to you, and being ready when they do." Rowan set the rifle on the table with a heavy thud. "You want us to be bait. I want you to be smart." Davies pulled out a chair, sat without invitation. "Right now, Graves thinks he's won. Your bakery's gone. You're on the run. The whole town thinks you're arsonists and thieves." He tapped the documents. "But these prove otherwise. We just need to get them to someone who can act on them." "The capital," Mara said. We were already planning to go. Then you were planning to get killed on the road. Graves has men watching every route out of Pale Hollow. Davies leaned back. But there's another way. A harder way. We're listening, Rowan said. 3 days from now, there's a territorial judge coming through Belmont. That's 40 miles east. He's touring the frontier settlements, hearing cases, settling disputes. Davies's eyes were sharp. Get these documents to him. Get him to issue warrants. Once the law's involved officially, Graves can't touch you. 40 miles through hostile territory with half the town hunting us, Mara said. That's suicide. It's your only shot. Silence fell over the cabin. Outside, wind rattled through the trees. Inside, the temperature was barely above freezing. Rowan's wound had stopped bleeding, but his face was still too pale. He needed rest, medicine, time. They had none of those things. What about you? Rowan asked Davies. Why are you helping us? The sheriff was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired. Because I've watched this town rot for 10 years. Watched good people get squeezed out. Watched men like Graves and Carver take everything while folks like your wife. He nodded at Mara. Barely survived. I told myself it wasn't my fight, that I was just keeping the peace. But you weren't, Mara said softly. No, I was just letting them win. Davies stood. I can't arrest Graves alone, but I can buy you time. Create a distraction. Make sure you get a head start. How? A grim smile crossed the old man's face. By doing my job. Finally! He left before either of them could respond, disappearing into the dark forest like a ghost. Mara moved to the window, watched him go. Do you trust him? No, Rowan said, but I think he's telling the truth. That's not the same thing. It's close enough. Mara turned back to him. He was still sitting, one hand pressed against his wounded side. The firelight made the shadows under his eyes look like bruises. You need to rest, she said. We need to move. Davies bought us time, but not much. Rowan, I'm fine. You're bleeding through your bandages. He looked down. Fresh blood had soaked through the makeshift dressing. It's not that bad. It's bad enough. Mara crossed to him, started unwrapping the bandages despite his protest. The wound looked angry, red and inflamed around the edges. This needs proper cleaning, real medicine. Don't have any? Then I'll make do. She grabbed a bottle from the shelf, whiskey, cheap and harsh, poured it directly onto the wound. Rowan's whole body went rigid. A sound escaped his throat somewhere between a growl and a scream that he bit off halfway through. His hand shot out, gripped the table edge hard enough that his knuckles went white. Sorry, Mara muttered, but she kept working, cleaning the wound as thoroughly as she could with limited supplies. When she was done, she used the last clean cloth to bandage him again. Rowan's breathing slowly returned to normal. He released the table, flexed his fingers. You done torturing me? For now. The corner of his mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. Good. They sat in silence for a while. The cabin was small, just one room with a bed, a stove, some basic supplies. Rowan had lived here alone for 5 years. It showed. Everything was functional but sparse. No decoration, no comfort, just the bare minimum for survival. How did you stand it? Mara asked. Being alone up here? Rowan stared at the fire. It was easier than being around people. People asked questions, looked at me like I was something dangerous, something broken. He paused. Up here, I could just be. Didn't have to explain, didn't have to pretend. Pretend what? That I was okay. He met her eyes. I killed 17 men in the war, that I know of. Could have been more. We didn't always count. His voice was flat, emotionless, like he was reciting facts from a ledger. I was good at it. That was the worst part. Not that I did it, but that I was good at it. Mara's throat tightened. That doesn't make you a monster. Doesn't make me a man either. You're wrong. She moved closer, sat beside him. A monster wouldn't have felt guilty, wouldn't have hidden away, wouldn't have saved my life when you had nothing to gain from it. I had everything to gain. You gave me food, shelter. A reason to... He stopped, looked away. A reason to what? To try again. To be something other than... He gestured vaguely at himself. This. Mara reached out, took his hand. His fingers were rough and scarred and warm. You are something other than that. You're the person who's fought beside me, who's protected me, who's bled for me. She squeezed his hand. You're the only person in 5 years who's made me feel like I'm not alone. Rowan stared at their joined hands. Something in his expression cracked. Mara, I know this is complicated. I know we're running for our lives. I know this is probably the worst possible time to say any of this. She forced herself to meet his eyes. But I need you to know, before we walk into whatever's coming, I need you to know that you matter, to me, more than you should. For a long moment, Rowan didn't move, didn't speak, just looked at her like she'd said something in a language he'd forgotten how to understand. Then he leaned forward and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't sweet. It was desperate and hungry and tasted like blood and whiskey. Mara kissed him back with everything she had, fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Rowan rested his forehead against hers. We're going to survive this, he said. Both of us. Together. Promise? I promise. It was a lie. They both knew it. But sometimes lies were all you had. They left at dawn. Rowan moved slower than Mara would have liked, but he moved. That was something. They traveled east, staying off the main roads, cutting through forest and rough country. By midday, Mara's feet were blistered, her legs burned. The cold bit through every layer she wore. But she kept going. Around noon, they heard it. Distant at first, then closer. Dogs barking, men shouting. They're tracking us, Rowan said. How far back? He listened. Mile, maybe less, and they're moving fast. Can we outrun them? Rowan looked at her, at his own wounded side, at the terrain ahead, steep and unforgiving. No, he said, we can't. Mara's heart sank. Then what do we do? We make them regret following us. He led her off the path, up a rocky slope to a narrow ridge. Below, the trail curved through a natural bottleneck, steep walls on both sides, only one way through. Perfect, Rowan muttered. He found a stack of loose rocks, started piling them at the edge of the ridge. Help me! They worked fast, building a makeshift barricade, gathering anything they could throw or drop. It wasn't much, but it was something. The dogs arrived first, 3 of them, lean and vicious, pulling their handlers forward. Behind them came more men. Mara counted 8, all armed. Leading them was the Carver boy. His nose was still bandaged from where Mara had broken it. The look in his eyes promised violence. They entered the bottleneck without hesitation. Rowan waited until they were fully committed. No easy retreat. Then he pushed the first boulder. It tumbled down the slope, picking up speed, crashing into the lead dog handler. The man went down screaming. His dog bolted. Chaos erupted. Men scattered. Rowan pushed another rock, then another. Mara joined him, shoving anything loose over the edge. A gunshot cracked. Stone exploded inches from Mara's head. She ducked. Stay down, Rowan ordered. He grabbed his rifle, returned fire. The shot echoed through the canyon. One of the men below dropped. The others took cover, started shooting back. Bullets pinged off rocks around them. One grazed Rowan's shoulder. He barely flinched. We need to move, Mara said. They'll flank us. Not yet. Need to thin them out first. He fired again. Missed. Fired a third time. Another man went down, clutching his leg. The Carver boy was screaming orders. Half his men were injured or scattered, but he was regrouping, getting organized. Now, Rowan said. Move now. They ran along the ridge, keeping low. Behind them, men were climbing, coming after them. But the steep terrain slowed them down. Rowan and Mara had maybe a 5-minute lead. They used every second. The ridge descended into thick forest. They plunged in, branches whipping at their faces. Mara's lungs burned, her vision blurred, but she didn't slow down, couldn't. Behind them, the pursuit continued, relentless. The dogs had picked up the scent again. She could hear them baying. There, Rowan pointed. A stream cut through the forest ahead. Fast-moving water, ice cold. Get in! That'll freeze us. It'll break our scent. Get in! They waded into the stream. The cold was instant and vicious, stealing the breath from Mara's lungs. Her legs went numb within seconds, but she pushed forward, following Rowan downstream. They stayed in the water for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, Rowan pulled them out on the far bank. Listen, he whispered. Mara held her breath. Listened. The dogs were barking, but the sound was confused now, scattered. They'd lost the trail. It worked, she breathed. For now. But they'll pick it up again. We need distance. They kept moving, soaking wet, freezing, exhausted, but alive. By nightfall, they'd put maybe 10 miles between themselves and their pursuers. Not enough. But it would have to do. Rowan found a hollow tree, big enough for both of them to squeeze inside. They huddled together for warmth, shivering violently. This is insane, Mara said through chattering teeth. We're going to freeze to death. Not if we keep each other warm. He pulled her closer, wrapped his arms around her. She pressed against him, seeking any scrap of heat. Gradually, the shivering lessened. Their combined body heat created a small pocket of warmth in the frozen dark. Tell me about the war, Mara said. She didn't know why. Maybe to distract from the cold. Maybe because she wanted to know him. All of him. Rowan was silent for a long time. Why? Because you're carrying it, and maybe it would help to share the weight. He sighed. His breath was warm against her hair. It wasn't glorious, wasn't noble. It was just mud and blood and dying slowly. His voice was quiet. I joined because I thought it mattered, thought I was fighting for something important, but all I was doing was killing people who were just as scared as I was. How old were you? 19. Thought I knew everything, thought I was a man. He laughed bitterly. War taught me otherwise. Taught me exactly how fragile everything is. How quickly you can go from human to animal when survival's on the line. Mara was quiet. Then, but you came back. Not all of me. The parts that did, he trailed off. I didn't recognize them anymore. Didn't know how to live with them, so I came here. Hid. Pretended the rest of the world didn't exist. And now? Now I'm realizing you can't hide forever. Eventually, life finds you, whether you want it to or not. He tightened his arms around her. Mara closed her eyes, let herself sink into the warmth and strength of him. I'm glad it found you, she whispered. So am I. They didn't sleep much that night. Too cold. Too aware of the danger still hunting them. But they had each other. And in the frozen darkness, that was enough. Dawn came gray and cold. They emerged from the tree stiff and aching. Rowan's wound had bled again overnight. The bandage was soaked through. We need to find a town, Mara said. Get you proper medical attention. Belmont's still 20 miles out. Can't risk any settlements before that. Word might have spread. Then we need to at least clean that wound before infection sets in. They found a spring a mile north, clear cold water bubbling up from underground. Mara made Rowan strip off his shirt while she cleaned the wound again. It looked bad. Worse than yesterday. The edges were angry red, hot to the touch. Definitely infected. This needs a doctor, she said. I'll survive. Rowan, I've had worse. Trust me. But his hands were shaking when he pulled his shirt back on, and his eyes had a glassy quality that spoke of fever. They kept moving anyway. What choice did they have? By afternoon, the terrain started changing. Less forest, more open country. Rolling hills dotted with dead grass and snow. It was exposed, dangerous, but it was also faster. They made good time. By sunset, they could see Belmont in the distance. A proper town bigger than Pale Hollow, buildings with actual second stories, smoke from dozens of chimneys. Civilization. We made it, Mara said. Relief flooded through her. We actually made it. Rowan nodded, but he swayed as he did it. Mara caught him before he fell. We're close, she said, just a little farther. I'm fine. Just dizzy. You're burning up. She pressed her hand to his forehead. He was radiating heat. The infection's getting worse. Doesn't matter. Need to find the judge first. The hell it doesn't matter, you're going to collapse. Not until we finish this. Stubborn bastard. Mara wanted to scream at him, wanted to drag him to the nearest doctor and force him to get help. But she knew that look in his eyes. The same look he'd had when he dragged himself through a blizzard to her door. The look that said he'd rather die than quit. All right, she said, Wissam, we find the judge, but then you're seeing a doctor. No arguments. Deal. They stumbled into Belmont as the sun set. People stared at them, two half-frozen, blood-stained strangers limping down the main street, but no one stopped them. Where would a territorial judge stay? Mara asked a woman sweeping her porch. The woman looked them up and down. The hotel, room 12. They found the hotel easily. 3 stories of timber and glass, nicer than anything in Pale Hollow. The lobby was warm, filled with well-dressed people having civilized conversations. Mara and Rowan looked like they'd crawled out of a grave. Can I help you? The desk clerk's nose wrinkled. We need to see Judge Harrison, Mara said. It's urgent. The judge doesn't see people without appointments. Then get us an appointment. I'm afraid that's not... Rowan slammed his hand on the desk. The sound cracked through the lobby like a gunshot. Everyone went quiet. Get the judge. Now. The clerk's eyes went wide. He nodded rapidly. I'll see if he's available. He scurried up the stairs. Mara caught Rowan as he swayed again. You need to sit down. I'm fine. You're not. Please. Just for a minute. He let her guide him to a chair. The moment he sat, his eyes closed. His breathing was too fast, too shallow. The fever was taking over. Footsteps on the stairs made Mara look up. An older man descended, gray-haired and well-dressed. Behind him, the nervous clerk pointed at them. I'm Judge Harrison, the man said. His voice was cultured, careful. I understand you need to see me urgently. Mara stood. We have evidence of corruption, land fraud, conspiracy, in Pale Hollow. Harrison's eyebrows rose. That's a serious accusation. It's true. We have documents, proof. She pulled the papers from inside her coat. They were crumpled, stained with blood and dirt, but still readable. Harrison took them, read through carefully, his expression growing darker with each page. Finally, he looked up. Where did you get these? We took them from the mayor's office. That's theft. That's survival. Mara's voice hardened. Mayor Graves tried to force me to sell my property. When I refused, he burned my home, sent men to kill us. We've been running for days. Harrison studied her face, then Rowan's, taking in their injuries, their exhaustion, the desperation in their eyes. Come upstairs, he said finally. Both of you. We need to talk properly. Mara helped Rowan to his feet. He could barely stand now. The fever had him in its grip. They made it to Harrison's room. The judge poured whiskey, offered it. Rowan drank his in one swallow. Mara just held hers. Start from the beginning, Harrison said. Tell me everything. So she did. The whole story. The storm, finding Rowan, the alliance, the theft, the fire, the chase. All of it. Harrison listened without interrupting, his face giving nothing away. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. These documents are legitimate, he said finally, but they were obtained illegally. That complicates things. Will you issue warrants? Mara asked. I can, but there's a process. I'll need to verify. Rowan collapsed. One moment he was sitting upright. The next he was on the floor, unconscious. Mara dropped to her knees beside him. Rowan! She grabbed his face. His skin was on fire. Stay with me, please. Harrison was already moving. I'll get a doctor. He ran out. Mara stayed on the floor, cradling Rowan's head. His breathing was ragged, uneven, like his body was forgetting how to do basic functions. You can't die, she told him. Not now, not after everything. You promised we'd survive this together. You promised. Rowan's eyes flickered open, just barely. He looked at her without really seeing. Mara, he whispered. I'm here. I'm right here. Sorry, should have been stronger. You are strong. You're the strongest person I know. You just need to hold on a little longer, please. His hand found hers, gripped weakly. Don't let them win. I won't. We won't. Together, remember? Together, he echoed. Then his eyes closed again. A doctor arrived minutes later. He examined Rowan quickly, efficiently. When he looked up, his expression was grim. The infection's severe. It's spread to his blood. Without treatment, he'll be dead by morning. Mara's world tilted. Then treat him. I'll do what I can. But you should prepare yourself. Don't tell me to prepare. Just save him. The doctor nodded, started working, cleaning the wound properly, administering medicine, doing everything medical science could offer. Mara watched helplessly. This couldn't be how it ended. Not after everything they'd survived. Not when they were so close. Harrison returned with 2 lawmen. These are my deputies. If Graves's men followed you here, station them outside, Mara said without looking away from Rowan. But they won't come. Not yet. They're waiting to see if we reach you. And now you have. Now we have. She finally looked at the judge. So what happens next? Harrison pulled out the documents again, studied them in the lamplight. I'll issue warrants tonight. For Graves. For Carver. For everyone named in these papers. He met her eyes. But you understand what this means. Once I do this, there's no going back. This becomes an official investigation. People will go to prison. Maybe hang. Good, Mara said flatly. They deserve it. Perhaps. But you'll be witnesses. You'll have to testify. Face them in court. Relive all of this. I don't care. As long as they answer for what they did. Harrison nodded slowly. Then I'll write the warrants. By tomorrow, the law will be looking for Mayor Graves and his conspirators. He paused. But know this. Men like that don't go quietly. This could get worse before it gets better. Mara looked down at Rowan, at the man who'd become everything to her, who was dying because he'd fought beside her. It's already as bad as it can get, she said. Now we fight back. Harrison left to draft the warrants. The doctor kept working through the night, and Mara stayed at Rowan's side, holding his hand, willing him to survive. Because she'd already lost everything once, she refused to lose him too. The fever broke just before dawn. Mara had been awake for 36 hours straight, watching Rowan's chest rise and fall, counting each breath like it might be his last. When his eyes finally opened, clear, focused, actually seeing her, she almost wept with relief. You're still here, he said. His voice was rough but steady. Where else would I be? Smart thing would have been to leave, finish this without me. Mara pressed her hand against his cheek. When are you going to understand that I don't do the smart thing? I do the right thing, and the right thing is staying with you. Something shifted in his expression, softened. How long was I out? Almost 2 days. The doctor said, she trailed off, throat tight. He said you might not make it. Takes more than an infection to kill me. Apparently, she managed a weak smile. The warrants are issued. Harrison sent deputies to Pale Hollow yesterday. They should be arresting Graves and Carver right about now. Rowan pushed himself up to sitting. The movement was slow, painful, but he managed. Then we won. Not yet. They still have to stand trial. We still have to testify. Mara hesitated. And there's something else. Harrison wants us to go back to Pale Hollow, says the trial needs to happen there, in front of the people they wronged. That's a death sentence. The moment we set foot in that town, we'll have protection. Harrison's bringing territorial marshals, armed escort, the whole process. She met his eyes. But he's right. Those people deserve to see justice done, to know their leaders were corrupt, to hear the truth. Rowan studied her face. You want to go back. I want to finish this, properly. Mara's hands curled into fists. They burned my home, tried to kill us, destroyed everything I built, and I want to watch them answer for it. A slow smile crossed Rowan's face, not his dangerous smile. Something else, something proud. Then let's go home. They left Belmont 3 days later. Rowan could walk without help now, though he still moved carefully. The infection had left him weakened but alive. The doctor had done his job well. Judge Harrison rode with them, along with 4 territorial marshals, hard men with harder eyes, the kind who'd seen frontier justice from both sides. They weren't there to protect Graves. They were there to make sure he lived long enough to hang. The journey back took 2 days. Mara watched the landscape change from open country back to forest, back to the mountains that surrounded Pale Hollow, like walls. Coming home felt strange, like returning to a place that had never really been hers to begin with. They reached town at midday. Word of their arrival had spread. People lined the street, watching in silence as the marshals rode through. Mara saw familiar faces. Martha Hendricks clutching her daughter. The Carver boys standing outside their father's store with murder in their eyes. Others she'd known for years, who'd bought her bread and gossiped about her husband and then turned their backs when she needed help most. None of them looked friendly. The marshals had set up operations in the town hall. Graves and Carver were already there, locked in separate rooms, awaiting arraignment. Mara could hear Graves shouting even from outside. "This is an outrage. I'm the mayor of this town. You can't just—" "We can, and we did," Harrison's voice cut through. "You're charged with fraud, conspiracy, arson, and attempted murder. The evidence is substantial. You'll stand trial next week." More shouting, threats about lawyers and connections and people who'd make Harrison regret this. The judge sounded bored. "Make all the threats you want. Won't change the facts." Mara and Rowan waited outside with the marshals. One of them, a lean man named Cole with a scar across his jaw, nodded toward the crowd still gathered in the street. "Lot of angry people out there," he said. "Some angry at Graves, some angry at you. Hard to tell which is which." "Story of my life," Mara muttered. "We'll keep watch tonight. But tomorrow, you'll need to give your testimony. Public hearing. Everyone in town's invited." Cole's eyes were serious. "It won't be pleasant. They'll try to discredit you, make you look like the criminals." "Let them try." Rowan touched her arm. "You don't have to do this. I can testify. You can stay—" "No." Mara's voice was firm. "I started this fight. I'm going to finish it." That night they stayed in the hotel, the only one Pale Hollow had. The marshals posted guards outside their door. Inside, Mara paced while Rowan sat on the bed, watching her. "You should rest," he said. "Can't. Too much in my head." "What are you thinking?" Mara stopped pacing, looked at him. "I'm thinking about the first time I saw this town. I was 18, new bride, following my husband to the frontier. I thought it was the ugliest place I'd ever seen, cold and harsh and full of hard people. What changed?" "Nothing. It's still all those things." She moved to the window, looked out at the dark street. "But it was mine. I built something here. Not much, but it was mine. And when they took it—" She trailed off. Rowan stood, came to stand behind her. "They didn't take it. They destroyed the building, that's all. The bakery. The real bakery. That's you. Your skill. Your work. That can't be burned." "You sound awfully philosophical for a man who lived alone on a mountain. Had a lot of time to think up there. Too much, probably." His hands settled on her shoulders. "You taught me something, Mara, these past months. You taught me that hiding doesn't solve anything, that sometimes you have to stand up and fight, even when you're scared, even when you might lose." "I'm terrified," she admitted, "of tomorrow, of standing in front of this whole town and telling them what happened, of seeing the hate in their eyes. Then I'll stand with you, like always." She turned to face him. "Why? You don't owe me anything anymore. You could leave. Go back to your mountain. Be free." "I don't want to be free." His hands cupped her face. "I want to be with you, however that looks, wherever that takes us." Mara's breath caught. "Rowan?" He kissed her, soft this time, gentle, like they had all the time in the world instead of a trial looming tomorrow and enemies circling outside. When they broke apart, Mara rested her forehead against his chest. His heartbeat was steady under her ear, strong. "We're going to rebuild," she said, "after this is over. I'm going to rebuild the bakery, better than before. And you're going to help me." "Am I?" "You are. Because you're not going back to that mountain. You're staying here. With me." She felt him smile against her hair. "Yes, ma'am." "I mean it. No more hiding. No more running. We face this town together. We build something together. We—" "Mara." He pulled back just enough to see her face. I know. And I'm saying yes to all of it. Relief and joy and terror all mixed together in her chest. She kissed him again, harder this time, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. They didn't sleep much that night either, but for entirely different reasons than before. Morning came too soon. Mara dressed in the one clean outfit she had left. Nothing fancy, just a simple dress and coat. Rowan wore his usual clothes, cleaned as best as possible. They looked like what they were, frontier people who'd survived hell and come back harder. The town hall was packed. Every seat taken, people standing along the walls and crowding the doorway. Mara walked in with Rowan at her side and felt every eye turned toward them. The hostility was palpable. These people hadn't forgiven her for bringing trouble to their town. Judge Harrison sat at the front, flanked by his marshals. Graves and Carver sat in chains, glaring daggers at everyone. Their lawyers, expensive men from the Capitol, shuffled papers and whispered strategies. All rise, Harrison called. The room obeyed. We're here to determine if sufficient evidence exists to try Mayor Silas Graves and Merchant Eli Carver on charges of fraud, conspiracy, arson, and attempted murder. Miss Quinn, please approach. Mara walked to the front. Her legs felt like water, her heart hammered, but she kept her head high. Harrison gestured to a chair. Please sit. Tell us in your own words what happened. So she did. Starting from the beginning, the winter storm, finding Rowan, the alliance, the theft. She admitted it, didn't hide it, explained why she'd been desperate enough to steal. Then the town meeting, the threat to her property, the fire, the chase, all of it. The room was dead silent. When she finished, Harrison nodded. Thank you, Miss Quinn. Now I believe the defense has questions. Graves's lawyer stood. He was a slick man in an expensive suit, the kind who made his living finding loopholes and technicalities. Miss Quinn, he began, you admit to theft, to breaking and entering, to stealing documents that belonged to Mayor Graves, correct? Yes. And you claim these documents prove fraud, but how do we know you didn't forge them, create false evidence to support your vendetta against my client? Because they're real. Anyone can verify the signatures, the handwriting. Perhaps. Or perhaps you're a clever forger. The lawyer smiled. After all, you've proven yourself willing to break the law when it suits you. Why should we trust anything you say? Anger flared hot in Mara's chest. Because I have nothing to gain from lying. My home is gone. My business is destroyed. I'm only here because I want justice, not revenge. Justice. Justice, the lawyer repeated. Or is it retribution? You were angry at Mayor Graves for trying to purchase your property. He wasn't trying to purchase it. He was trying to steal it. That's your perspective. From his perspective, he was offering fair compensation for land needed for community development. You refused. Became difficult. Aligned yourself with a known criminal. He gestured at Rowan. And together you manufactured this elaborate scheme to discredit him. That's a lie. Is it? Or is it the truth you don't want to hear? Mara stood up. The truth is that your client is a thief and a coward. He tried to cheat this entire town out of thousands of dollars. When I discovered it, he tried to kill me, set fire to my home, sent armed men to murder us in the woods. Her voice rose. The truth is that he's guilty, and everyone in this room knows it. The lawyer opened his mouth to respond, but Harrison held up a hand. That's enough. He looked at the crowd. I've reviewed the documents. I've examined the signatures. I've verified the accounts. He turned to Graves. The evidence is overwhelming. This case will proceed to trial. Graves exploded. This is a farce, a witch hunt. I'll have your job, Harrison. You'll be silent. Harrison's voice cracked like a whip. Or I'll hold you in contempt. Graves subsided, seething. The hearing continued. Rowan testified next, corroborating everything Mara had said. Then Sheriff Davies, who'd arrived that morning with his own testimony about Graves's corruption, then others. Townspeople who'd been pressured to sell, who'd seen the fires being set, who'd been threatened into silence. By the end of the day, the case was ironclad. Harrison banged his gavel. Trial is set for 1 week from today. Until then, the defendants will remain in custody. He looked at Mara. Miss Quinn, Mr. Vance, Thank you for your courage. It was over. The first part, anyway. Mara walked out of the town hall feeling lighter than she had in months. The crowd parted for them now. Some people still glared, but others nodded, acknowledged them, respected them. Martha Hendricks approached as they reached the street. Miss Quinn, I owe you an apology. Mara blinked. For what? For not believing you, for thinking. Martha trailed off. I was wrong. About you. About him. She nodded at Rowan. You did the right thing, the hard thing, and we should have supported you. It's all right. It's not, but maybe we can do better. Going forward. Martha hesitated. There's talk of rebuilding your bakery. The town council, the new one, once Graves is gone, they want to help. As an apology. As a thank you. Mara's throat tightened. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's justice. Martha smiled. You lost everything fighting for us. The least we can do is help you build it back. After Martha left, Mara stood in the street, looking at the empty lot where her bakery had been. Just charred wood and ash now. Nothing left. But she could see it. The new building. Bigger. Better. A real business. Not just something she scraped by with. A place that mattered. What are you thinking? Rowan asked. I'm thinking about the future. About what we're going to build. She looked at him. Together. He smiled. Together. The trial lasted 3 days. The prosecution presented their evidence methodically, building an airtight case. The defense fought hard, but they had nothing to work with. The documents were real. The witnesses were credible. The conspiracy was undeniable. On the third day, the jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty, on all counts. The sentencing came immediately. Graves got 15 years in territorial prison. Carver got 10. Their co-conspirators got lesser sentences, but everyone involved would pay. When the verdict was read, Graves lunged at Mara. You destroyed me! You ruined everything! The marshals restrained him, but he kept screaming. I'll kill you. I'll hunt you down. You'll do nothing. Harrison's voice was cold. Take him away. They dragged Graves out, still raging. Carver went quietly, head down, defeated. And just like that, it was over. The town threw a celebration that night. Nothing fancy, just people gathering in the street, sharing food and drink, talking and laughing. The fear that had gripped Pale Hollow for years had finally broken. Mara stood on the edge of it all, watching. She'd never been comfortable in crowds. But tonight felt different. These people were celebrating her, thanking her, treating her like she mattered. It was strange and overwhelming and wonderful. You did good, Sheriff Davies appeared at her elbow. He looked older than he had a month ago, tired, but also relieved. This town needed someone to stand up, to fight. You did that. We did that, Mara corrected, nodding toward Rowan, who was talking with some of the younger men. Actually talking. Not hiding, not running, just existing like a normal person. Davies followed her gaze. He's different, since he met you. More human. He was always human. People just didn't see it. Maybe. Davies paused. What will you do now? Rebuild the bakery? That's the plan. The town council offered to help. I'm going to take them up on it. Mara smiled. Going to build something permanent this time. Something that lasts. And him? Davies nodded at Rowan. He's staying. Mara hesitated. We're figuring it out. Together. Good. You're good for each other. Davies tipped his hat. Welcome home, Miss Quinn. He walked away. Mara stood alone for a moment, letting the words sink in. Welcome home. Like she'd finally earned her place here. Like she finally belonged. Rowan appeared at her side. You okay? Yeah, just thinking. About? About how much can change in a few months. How a stranger on your porch can become... She trailed off, not sure how to finish. Everything? Rowan suggested quietly. Mara looked up at him. At this man who'd been called a monster, who'd hidden from the world, who'd somehow become the most important person in her life. Yeah, she said. Everything. He took her hand. Come on, let's go see our lot. They walked through the celebrating town to the empty space where the bakery had stood. Someone had already cleared the debris. staked out the corners, left a sign that read, Quinn's Bakery, opening spring 1878. Spring? Mara said. That's ambitious. You're ambitious. Always have been. Rowan squeezed her hand. We'll make it work. We will. She looked at the empty lot, imagining the building that would stand there, the ovens, the counter, the shelves lined with bread. A proper business. A real home. It's going to be better than before. Stronger. Like you. Mara laughed. I'm not stronger. I'm just too stubborn to quit. Same thing. They stood there as the celebration continued around them. Two people who'd survived the worst and come out the other side. Two people who'd found each other in the storm and decided to stay. Winter would come again. Hard times would return. The frontier didn't offer easy lives or happy endings tied up with ribbons. But Mara had learned something in the fire and blood and fighting. She'd learned that strength wasn't about being perfect. It was about getting back up, about fighting for what mattered, about refusing to let the bastards win. She'd also learned that being alone wasn't the same as being strong, that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was let someone in. Trust them. Build something together that neither of you could build alone. 6 months later, the bakery opened. It was bigger than the old one, with real glass windows and a proper oven and space for customers to sit. The whole town showed up for the opening. Even people from neighboring settlements came to see the place that had sparked a revolution. Mara stood behind the counter, overwhelmed by the crowd. Rowan worked beside her, comfortable now in the role of Baker's assistant and partner. He'd never be chatty, would never be the social type, but he didn't flinch when people talked to him anymore, didn't hide. Martha Hendricks was first in line. 2 loaves of sourdough, please, and whatever those pastries are, they smell amazing. Almond croissants, new recipe. Mara bagged them up. On the house, for everything you did. I didn't do anything except doubt you. I didn't do anything except doubt you. I didn't do anything except doubt you. You apologized. You apologized. You helped rebuild. That's something. Mara smiled. Besides, everyone gets 1 free pastry on opening day. Consider it marketing. The day was chaos. Good chaos. The kind that came from success. By evening, they'd sold out of everything. Mara locked the door and collapsed against it, exhausted and happy. We did it, she said. Rowan was cleaning the counter, methodical as always. We did. I mean, really did it. Built something that matters, something that'll last. He stopped cleaning, looked at her. It'll last because you built it, because you're too stubborn to let it fail. We built it, both of us. Yeah, he smiled, that real smile, the one he only showed her. We did. They finished cleaning in comfortable silence. Outside, Pale Hollow settled into evening. Smoke rose from chimneys. Lights flickered in windows. Life continued, hard and cold and beautiful. Mara thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago. Newly widowed, barely surviving, convinced she'd die alone and forgotten. That girl would have been amazed at where she'd ended up. Who she'd become. Because Mara wasn't that scared, desperate woman anymore. She was something else now, stronger, harder, but also more open, more willing to trust, more willing to fight. The frontier did that to people. It broke them down and built them back up into something new, something that could survive the harsh winters and brutal realities, something that endured. She'd lost her first bakery, lost her security, nearly lost her life, but she'd gained something more valuable. She'd gained herself, her strength, her voice, her willingness to stand up and fight when everything said to run. And she'd gained Rowan, this complicated, damaged, beautiful man who'd walked into her life during a blizzard and somehow become home. What are you thinking? He asked. Mara looked at him, at their bakery, at the life they'd built from ashes and determination. I'm thinking we won, she said. Not just the trial, not just the bakery, but everything. We survived. We fought. We won. Rowan crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. We did. She rested her head against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong and alive. Outside, winter was coming, the first snow would fall soon, the hard months would return. but they'd survive them, together. Because that's what they did, what they'd always do. Survive, fight, build, endure. And in the harsh lands of the frontier where nothing came easy and death was always close, that was more than enough. That was everything. Years later, when people told stories about Pale Hollow's corruption and the baker who brought down a mayor, they'd get the details wrong, make Mara into some kind of hero, make Rowan into a reformed villain, make the whole thing into a neat little fable about good triumphing over evil. But Mara would know the truth, that there were no heroes, no villains, just people trying to survive. Some doing it honestly, others not. She'd know that justice wasn't clean or easy, that it cost everything you had and then asked for more, that winning meant losing pieces of yourself along the way. But she'd also know that it was worth it, every scar, every nightmare, every moment of terror. Because in the end, she'd built something that mattered, not just a bakery, but a life, a real one, with someone who understood her, who'd fought beside her, who'd chosen to stay when leaving would have been easier. And in the frozen frontier town of Pale Hollow, where winter came hard and people came harder, that was the closest thing to a happy ending anyone could hope for. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was hers, theirs, built from nothing but courage and stubbornness and the refusal to let the cold win, and that made it beautiful.